At 18, Emily was sold by her desperate uncle to a mysterious mountain man who lived alone deep in the Rockies. Everyone believed her life was over. But what nobody knew was that Emily carried a secret powerful enough to change both their destinies forever. Stay until the end, because this mountain marriage would uncover a truth neither of them expected. The girl nobody wanted. The year was 1887. Snow still covered the highest peaks of the Rocky Mountains when 18-year-old Emily Harper stood outside the small trading post in Cedar Creek. The town wasn't much more than a handful of wooden buildings surrounded by endless wilderness. Emily's parents had died 3 years earlier from a winter fever. Since then, she'd lived with her uncle Nathan. Life under Nathan's roof had been harsh. He drank away most of his earnings and blamed Emily for every hardship that entered his life. "You eat more than you're worth," he often growled. Emily never argued. She simply worked. From sunrise until darkness, she cooked, cleaned, washed clothes, and tended animals. Yet nothing she did was ever enough. One cold afternoon, Nathan returned home with a stranger. The man was enormous, tall, broad-shouldered. His dark beard reached halfway down his chest. A weathered fur coat hung around his muscular frame. Emily had never seen anyone like him. The stranger's name was Caleb Stone. He lived alone in a remote mountain valley nearly 2 days away. As Caleb sat silently by the fire, Nathan poured whiskey into 2 glasses. The men talked quietly. Emily couldn't hear everything, but she heard enough. Money, land, marriage. Then came the words that froze her blood. "She's 18, Nathan said. "Strong enough for mountain life." Caleb remained silent. Nathan slid a document across the table. The mountain man stared into the flames. Finally he nodded. A leather pouch filled with coins landed on the table. Emily's heart dropped. Her uncle had sold her. The next morning Nathan gave her the news. "You leave today." Emily's voice trembled. "You sold me." Nathan shrugged. "You should be grateful. Most men wouldn't take a girl with no dowry." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't want this. It doesn't matter." Those words cut deeper than any knife. For the first time, Emily realized she truly had nobody. No family, no home, no future she could choose herself. Only the mountain man waiting outside. Caleb loaded supplies onto 2 horses. When Emily approached, she expected cruelty. Instead he handed her a heavy winter coat. "The mountains get cold." His voice was deep but surprisingly gentle. That confused her even more. She climbed onto the horse. Without another word, they left Cedar Creek behind. Emily looked back one last time. Nobody waved goodbye. Nobody cared she was leaving. Nobody except perhaps herself. As the town disappeared into the distance, tears rolled down her cheeks. Her old life was over. And she had no idea what waited for her in the mountains. For 2 days they traveled through forests and rocky trails. Caleb barely spoke. Emily remained cautious. She expected him to reveal some terrible side eventually. Most men she knew did. Yet every evening he made camp, cooked food, and gave her the warmest blankets. He never crossed boundaries, never raised his voice, never demanded anything. That made her even more curious. Who was this man, and why would someone like him pay money for a wife? Late on the second evening, they reached a hidden valley surrounded by towering mountains. A sturdy log cabin stood near a crystal-clear river. Smoke rose from the chimney. Several horses grazed nearby. The place was beautiful, far more beautiful than anything Emily had imagined. But then she noticed something unexpected. 2 small girls stood outside the cabin. One appeared about 7, the other perhaps 5. The younger child immediately ran toward Caleb. "Daddy." Emily froze. "Daddy." The little girl wrapped her arms around Caleb's leg. The older sister followed. Both children smiled brightly. Emily looked at Caleb in shock. Nobody had told her he had children. Nobody had told her anything. Caleb seemed uncomfortable. "We should talk." Emily's stomach tightened. Something wasn't right, and she had a feeling the truth would change everything. The secret in the mountain cabin. Emily stood frozen beside her horse. 2 little girls clung to Caleb as though he were the center of their world. The younger one buried her face against his coat. The older girl watched Emily carefully. Confusion twisted inside Emily's chest. Her uncle had never mentioned children. Not once. She looked at Caleb. You have daughters. Caleb sighed heavily. Yes. Emily felt anger rising. What else haven't I been told? For a moment, Caleb didn't answer. The mountain wind blew through the valley, carrying the scent of pine trees and river water. Finally, he spoke. My wife died 3 years ago. Emily looked away. Part of her anger softened. The pain in his voice sounded genuine. The girls need someone, Caleb continued quietly. Someone who can help make this place a home again. Emily folded her arms. So you bought a wife? The words came out sharper than she intended. Caleb lowered his eyes. No. Emily laughed bitterly. That's exactly what happened. The little girls looked between them nervously. Caleb glanced toward his daughters. We'll talk inside. The cabin was surprisingly warm. A large stone fireplace crackled in one corner. Handmade furniture filled the room. Everything was clean, simple, comfortable. The older girl stepped forward. My name is Lily. Emily forced a small smile. Nice to meet you. The younger child peeked out from behind Caleb. I'm Grace. Emily nodded. Hello, Grace. Unlike many children she'd known, these girls weren't spoiled or rude. They seemed kind, polite, almost desperate for affection. That realization made Emily's heart ache. She knew what loneliness felt like. Later that evening, after dinner, the girls went to bed. Silence settled over the cabin. Only the fire continued to crackle. Emily sat across from Caleb. Now she wanted answers. All of them. Caleb stared into the flames. I never wanted to buy anyone. Then why did you? Because your uncle came to me. Emily frowned. What? He told me you needed a safe place. Emily almost laughed. A safe place? He said he planned to send you east to work for a man known for mistreating young women. Emily's stomach tightened. Nathan had mentioned something months ago. A factory owner. A wealthy businessman. At the time she'd ignored it. Now she wasn't so sure. I didn't know. Caleb nodded. I believed you deserved better than that. Emily didn't know what to think. Everything felt upside down. If that's true, she asked quietly, why marry me? Caleb hesitated. Because a single man can't legally adopt help for the girls. The town pastor suggested marriage. Emily stared at him. For the first time, his explanation actually made sense. Not perfect, but better than the story she'd imagined. That night Emily lay awake. Moonlight spilled through the cabin window. The events of the past week replayed endlessly in her mind. She wasn't happy about being forced into marriage. But Caleb wasn't the monster she'd expected. The girls clearly loved him. And for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of the person sleeping under the same roof. Still, something felt strange. Something Caleb wasn't saying. The next morning Emily woke before sunrise. Years of hard work had trained her body to rise early. She quietly stepped outside. The valley looked magical. Golden sunlight touched the mountain peaks. Birds sang from the forest. For a moment she forgot her troubles. Then she noticed something unusual. Near the edge of the property stood a small wooden grave marker. Curious, she walked closer. There wasn't just one grave. There were 3. Emily's breath caught. The first belonged to Caleb's wife. The second belonged to an infant boy. The third grave had no name. Only a date. 3 years earlier. The same year Caleb's wife died. Emily stared at it. Why would someone bury a person without a name? A chill crawled up her spine. That afternoon she asked Lily about it. The little girl's smile disappeared instantly. We're not supposed to talk about that. Emily's curiosity grew. Why not? Lily lowered her voice. Because it makes Daddy sad. Grace looked frightened. Very sad. The girls refused to say anything more. Days passed. Emily slowly settled into mountain life. She helped cook meals, mended clothes, taught Grace to read. For the first time in years, someone actually thanked her for her work. The girls quickly became attached to her. Especially Grace. One evening the little girl fell asleep in Emily's lap beside the fire. Emily gently brushed hair from the child's face. Something warm stirred inside her heart. A feeling she'd nearly forgotten. Belonging. But peace never lasts forever. 1 week later, trouble arrived. A rider appeared on the mountain trail. Emily recognized him immediately. Her blood turned cold. Nathan, her uncle, the man who had sold her. He dismounted and smiled. The smile made Emily uneasy. Nathan only smiled when he wanted something. Caleb stepped outside. What are you doing here? Nathan's eyes shifted toward Emily. I'm here to collect what's mine. Emily's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Nathan reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. The moment Caleb saw it, his face darkened. For the first time since she'd met him, genuine anger flashed across his eyes. Nathan grinned. Looks like your wife doesn't know the whole story. Emily looked between them. What story? Neither man answered immediately, and suddenly she realized the marriage agreement contained a secret. A dangerous secret, one that could destroy everything she had started to build in the mountains. The agreement that changed everything. Emily's eyes moved from Nathan's smug face to Caleb's tense expression. The cheerful mountain valley suddenly felt cold. Dangerously cold. Nathan unfolded the paper slowly, enjoying every second. I see you never told her. Caleb's jaw tightened. Leave. Nathan laughed. I'll leave when I get what belongs to me. Emily stepped forward. What is that document? Nathan handed it to her. Her hands trembled as she read. At first, the words made little sense. Then she reached the final section. Her heart nearly stopped. The agreement stated that if Caleb and Emily's marriage failed within 1 year, ownership of a large section of Caleb's valley land would transfer to Nathan. Emily looked up in shock. What is this? Nathan smiled. Insurance. Caleb's eyes burned with anger. It was blackmail. Emily turned toward him. You signed this. I had no choice. Nathan interrupted. Oh, you had a choice. You just wanted a wife badly enough. Caleb took a threatening step forward. Nathan wisely stepped back. For a moment, Emily thought the two men might fight. Then Nathan mounted his horse. I'll be back before winter. His grin widened. And if this little marriage falls apart, the land becomes mine. With that, he rode away, leaving silence behind. That evening nobody spoke much. Lily and Grace sensed something was wrong. After the girls fell asleep, Emily sat alone near the fireplace. The document rested in her lap. Finally Caleb spoke. I was going to tell you. When? I didn't know. Emily stared into the flames. Why would you sign something like this? Caleb rubbed his face. Because he looked exhausted, older than she had ever noticed. That land belongs to my family. Then why risk it? His answer came quietly. Because I was afraid for my daughters. Emily looked at him. The winters here are hard. The girls needed someone. Nathan knew that. The realization hit her. Her uncle had manipulated both of them. Caleb wasn't the villain. Nathan was. He had sold Emily and tried to steal Caleb's property at the same time. A scheme designed to profit no matter what happened. Over the following weeks, Emily tried to ignore the agreement. Life on the mountain continued. Summer slowly painted the valley green. The girls laughed more. The cabin felt warmer. And something unexpected happened. Emily began enjoying her new life. She loved teaching Grace. She loved helping Lily with reading lessons. She even enjoyed long conversations with Caleb during quiet evenings. The mountain man was thoughtful, patient, protective, nothing like the cruel men she'd known before. One afternoon, a powerful storm rolled through the mountains. Dark clouds swallowed the sky. Rain poured down. Thunder shook the valley. Emily was gathering laundry when she noticed Grace missing. Her heart jumped. Grace. No answer. Panic spread instantly. The storm was growing worse. She ran toward the cabin. Caleb. Grace is gone. Within seconds, he grabbed his rifle and raincoat. Lily burst into tears. She went looking for wildflowers. The storm roared overhead. Caleb's face turned pale. The nearby river would become dangerous very quickly. For hours they searched. Rain soaked their clothes. The forest grew darker. Emily called Grace's name until her throat hurt. Still no answer. Finally, near sunset, Caleb spotted something. A small shoe, caught beneath a fallen branch. Emily's heart sank. No. Caleb followed tiny footprints leading toward the river. Then they heard it. A faint cry. Help. Grace. She was trapped on a rocky ledge above rushing water. The river had risen dramatically. One wrong step could carry her away forever. Emily felt terror grip her chest. The current was too strong. Too dangerous. But Caleb didn't hesitate. He tied a rope around his waist. Hold this. Emily grabbed the rope. Caleb. If I slip, don't let go. Then he stepped into the raging water. The river fought him every inch. Twice he nearly fell. Emily pulled the rope with all her strength. Her hands burned. Rain blinded her eyes. But Caleb kept moving. Closer, closer. Finally he reached Grace. The little girl threw her arms around his neck. For one terrifying moment, a wave crashed against them. Both disappeared beneath the water. Emily screamed. Then Caleb emerged again, alive, holding Grace tightly. Together they fought their way back. When they finally reached shore, Emily collapsed to her knees. Relief flooded through her. Grace was safe. Back at the cabin, the little girl clung to Emily, refusing to let go. You came for me. Emily kissed her forehead. Of course I did. Grace's small arms tightened around her neck. You're my mama. The words hit Emily harder than she expected. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Nobody had ever needed her like this. Nobody had ever loved her like this. Tears filled her eyes. Across the room, Caleb quietly watched. Neither of them spoke, but something had changed. Something important. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Caleb approached the fireplace. The storm had finally passed. Moonlight shone through the windows. I owe you an apology. Emily looked up. For what? For bringing you here without a choice. Silence filled the room. Then Caleb continued. If you want to leave after the year ends, I'll help you. Emily stared at him. The offer surprised her, because deep inside, she wasn't sure she wanted to leave anymore. The valley felt like home. The girls felt like family. And Caleb was becoming something far more dangerous. Someone she was beginning to care about. But before she could answer, a loud knock echoed against the cabin door. 3 hard knocks. At midnight, both froze. Nobody visited the valley after dark. Especially not during storm season. Caleb grabbed his rifle. Slowly, he opened the door. A wounded stranger collapsed inside, covered in blood, and with his final breath, he whispered 5 words. They found the hidden gold. Then he lost consciousness. Caleb's face turned completely white, as though he had just heard a ghost speak. The hidden gold. The wounded man collapsed onto Caleb's cabin floor. Emily rushed forward. He's bleeding badly. Caleb immediately knelt beside the stranger. His face had turned pale the moment he'd heard those words. They found the hidden gold. Emily noticed it. The fear, the shock, the recognition. Whatever the stranger meant, Caleb understood it. And it terrified him. Together they carried the injured man to a bed near the fireplace. Emily cleaned his wounds while Caleb remained unusually quiet. Several deep cuts covered the man's shoulder and side. They looked like knife wounds. Not animal attacks. Someone had tried to kill him. Hours passed. Near dawn, the stranger finally woke. His eyes darted around the room in panic. Then he saw Caleb. Stone. Caleb leaned forward. Jacob. Emily frowned. The 2 men clearly knew each other. Jacob swallowed painfully. They found it. Who? The Mercer gang. Caleb cursed under his breath. Emily had never heard him curse before. The seriousness of the situation became instantly clear. After helping Jacob drink water, Emily demanded answers. What is happening? Neither man spoke immediately. Finally Jacob looked toward Caleb. You never told her. Caleb sighed heavily. No. Emily crossed her arms. Then tell me now. The room fell silent. Only the fire crackled. At last Caleb spoke. 20 years ago my father discovered a gold vein somewhere in these mountains. Emily's eyes widened. Gold. Caleb nodded. He never told anyone where it was. Jacob continued the story. People came from everywhere looking for it. Prospectors, outlaws, treasure hunters. But nobody found it. No. Jacob shook his head. Your father took the secret to his grave. Caleb stared into the flames. Or so everyone believed. Emily listened carefully. Years earlier, Caleb's father had hidden a map. A map leading to the gold. After his death, rumors spread throughout the region. Some believed the treasure never existed. Others spent years searching. Eventually most people gave up. But not everyone. The Mercer gang had never stopped. They were among the most feared outlaws in the territory. Robbers, killers, men who would burn entire settlements for money. And now they believed the map had resurfaced. Emily's stomach tightened. What does this have to do with Jacob? Jacob's face darkened. I found something. Caleb looked up sharply. What? Jacob slowly reached inside his coat. He pulled out a weathered leather pouch. Inside was an old folded paper. A map. The edges were yellow with age. The moment Caleb saw it, his expression changed. Where did you get that? Jacob swallowed. Hidden beneath the floorboards of your father's old hunting cabin. Emily's heart raced. The map was real. The gold was real. And now dangerous men were hunting it. That evening Jacob revealed the rest of the story. The Mercer gang had ambushed him 3 days earlier. Someone had seen him leave the hunting cabin. They wanted the map. Jacob escaped. Barely. 3 men died during the chase. And now the outlaws were searching the mountains. Looking for him. Looking for Caleb. Looking for the treasure. That night Emily couldn't sleep. She sat outside beneath the stars. The valley looked peaceful, beautiful, but danger was moving toward them. She could feel it. A few moments later Caleb joined her. Neither spoke for a while. Finally Emily broke the silence. Are you going after the gold? Caleb stared toward the mountains. No. She looked surprised. Why not? He smiled sadly. Because I've already lost enough. The answer caught her off guard. Caleb continued quietly. My father spent most of his life chasing that treasure. Emily listened. He missed birthdays, missed family dinners, missed everything that mattered. The mountain man looked toward the cabin window where Lily and Grace slept. When he died, do you know what he left us? Emily shook her head. A legend. His voice hardened. Nothing more. For the first time Emily understood. Caleb didn't want gold. He wanted peace, family, a future, things money couldn't buy. The next morning, disaster arrived. Lily was feeding chickens near the barn when she screamed. Emily ran outside. 3 riders stood at the edge of the property. Armed, dangerous, watching. Their leader wore a black hat. A long scar crossed his face. Even from a distance, evil seemed to radiate from him. Caleb stepped onto the porch. His rifle rested in his hands. The scarred rider smiled. Morning, Stone. Caleb's expression darkened. Mercer. Emily's blood ran cold. This was him, the outlaw leader, the man hunting the gold. Mercer glanced around the valley. His smile widened. Nice little family you've built. The threat was obvious. Emily felt sick. Caleb slowly raised his rifle. You have 10 seconds to leave. Mercer laughed. Or what? For several long moments nobody moved. The tension felt unbearable. Then Mercer tipped his hat. We'll meet again. His eyes shifted toward Emily. Then toward the girls. A silent warning. A promise. And finally the outlaws rode away. The moment they disappeared, Caleb turned to Jacob. We don't have much time. Jacob nodded. They'll come back. Emily looked between them. What do we do? Caleb's answer came immediately. We find the treasure first. Emily blinked. I thought you didn't want it. I don't. His eyes moved toward Lily and Grace. But if Mercer finds it before us, he'll never stop hunting this family. The realization hit all of them at once. This was no longer about gold. It was about survival. That evening they unfolded the map across the kitchen table. Old symbols covered the page. Mountain sketches, landmarks, cryptic notes. Most of it made little sense. Then Emily noticed something. A small drawing hidden in one corner. A flower. A very specific flower. The same rare blue flower that grew near the river. Her eyes widened. I've seen this before. Caleb looked up sharply. Where? Emily pointed toward the eastern cliffs. Near the waterfall. The room fell silent. Jacob slowly smiled. If she's right. Caleb finished the sentence. The treasure isn't far from here. Outside, dark clouds gathered above the mountains. And miles away, Mercer and his gang were already riding toward the same destination. The race for the hidden gold had begun. The cave behind the waterfall. The next morning, Caleb, Emily, and Jacob left before sunrise. A cold mist hung over the valley. The mountains were silent, too silent, as if the wilderness itself knew something dangerous was coming. Back at the cabin, Lily and Grace remained with Mrs. Parker, an elderly widow who lived several miles away. Caleb didn't want the girls anywhere near the treasure hunt. Or the Mercer gang. The map led them east toward the cliffs. For hours they climbed rocky trails through dense pine forests. Emily carried the map while Caleb scanned the mountains for signs of danger. Jacob kept checking behind them. Nobody trusted Mercer to stay away. Not after yesterday. Around noon they reached the waterfall. Hundreds of feet of water crashed into a pool below. The roar echoed through the valley. Emily immediately spotted the blue flowers from the map. They grew along the rocks exactly where she'd remembered. Jacob smiled. You were right. But Caleb wasn't celebrating. He was studying the cliff face carefully, looking for something. Then he saw it, a narrow opening hidden behind the waterfall. A cave. The entrance was almost invisible. Without the map, nobody would have noticed it. The three carefully crossed slippery rocks and entered the darkness. Inside, the air felt cold and damp. Water dripped from the ceiling. Emily held a lantern high. Ancient markings covered the walls. Old mining symbols. Her heart raced. This place had definitely been used before. Farther inside they discovered abandoned tools. Rusty pickaxes. Broken lanterns. Wooden supports. Someone had worked there years ago. Possibly Caleb's father. Then they found something even more important. A locked wooden chest. Dust covered every inch. It had clearly remained untouched for decades. Jacob's eyes widened. We found it. Emily felt excitement rush through her. Caleb stared silently at the chest, almost afraid to open it. Finally he knelt down. The lock had long ago rusted away. Slowly he lifted the lid. Inside lay stacks of gold bars. Pure gold. More wealth than any of them had ever imagined. For several seconds nobody spoke. The treasure was real. After 20 years of rumors and legends, it was finally here. Jacob laughed in disbelief. We're rich. Emily smiled. Even Caleb seemed stunned. But then something caught Emily's attention. Another object rested beneath the gold. A leather journal. Old. Weathered. She carefully picked it up. The name on the cover made Caleb freeze. It belonged to his father. They sat inside the cave reading the journal. Page after page revealed the truth. Caleb's father had discovered the gold years earlier. But instead of taking it, he'd hidden it. The final pages explained why. The gold had destroyed friendships, created greed, started violence. Men had already died trying to claim it. So he chose to leave it buried forever. At the end of the journal, one final message appeared. For my son, if you are reading this, then you found what countless others spent their lives seeking. Remember this. The treasure was never the gold. The treasure was always the family waiting for me at home. Tears filled Caleb's eyes. For the first time, he understood his father completely. Suddenly a gunshot echoed through the cave. Bang! Rock exploded near Jacob's head. Everyone dropped instantly. A voice thundered from the entrance. Nobody move. Mercer. Emily's heart stopped. They were too late. The outlaws had followed them. Mercer entered the cave with 6 armed men. Their rifles pointed directly at Caleb's group. The outlaw leader smiled. I knew you'd find it for me. Jacob cursed. Caleb slowly stood. This ends here. Mercer laughed. No, Stone. He looked at the gold. This is where it begins. The outlaws quickly surrounded the treasure chest. Their greedy eyes sparkled. Years of searching had finally paid off. Mercer's smile widened. Kill them. Emily's blood turned cold. The outlaws raised their weapons. Then suddenly, boom, a massive explosion echoed outside the cave. Everyone froze. Another explosion followed. Dust rained from the ceiling. One outlaw shouted, "The entrance!" Huge rocks began crashing down. The waterfall had weakened part of the cliff. The gunfire had triggered a collapse. Panic erupted instantly. Men scrambled in every direction. The cave shook violently. Another section of ceiling broke apart. A giant boulder crushed one of Mercer's men. The treasure chest overturned. Gold bars scattered across the ground. Chaos consumed everything. Run! Caleb shouted. He grabbed Emily's hand. Jacob followed close behind. Mercer's gang was too busy saving themselves to stop them. The entire cave was collapsing. More rocks crashed down. The narrow exit was disappearing fast. For one terrifying moment Emily slipped. Caleb caught her. Together they raced toward daylight. Behind them Mercer screamed orders. But nobody listened anymore. Every man was fighting for survival. They barely escaped. Moments after reaching the outside, the cave collapsed completely. Thousands of tons of rock buried the entrance forever. Silence followed. The hidden gold. The treasure. The entire cave. Gone. Lost beneath the mountain, perhaps forever. Mercer staggered out seconds later. Covered in dust, furious. His dream had disappeared before his eyes. Years of obsession destroyed in a single moment. He glared at Caleb, then at Emily. Pure hatred burned in his eyes. This isn't over. But before he could raise his weapon, a new sound echoed through the valley. Hoofbeats. Lots of them. Mercer's face changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. A dozen lawmen appeared along the ridge. Rifles aimed. Mercer had walked straight into a trap. The hunt was finally over. But as Caleb wrapped an arm around Emily and looked toward the mountains, he realized something else. The greatest treasure had never been buried inside the cave. It was waiting back home. And for the first time in years, he was ready to claim it. The final reckoning. What if the truth you've been chasing is the very thing that saves your life? The morning after the storm, the ranch didn't feel the same. The air was too still, too clean, like the world had finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. Emily stood at the edge of the barn, her fingers trembling around a folded letter she had found hidden beneath a loose wooden plank. The ink was old, the paper worn, but the name at the bottom made her heart stop. Mercer Blackwell. Behind her, boots crunched against gravel. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Daniel Mercer, the man who had once ruled fear over half the valley, now stood silent, stripped of power, waiting for judgment that had already begun the moment the sun rose. "You found it," he said quietly. Emily finally turned. His face looked different now. Not softer, but exposed. Like a man who had spent years wearing armor that someone had finally removed. "I don't understand," Emily whispered. "This letter, it says my mother knew you before I was born. It says you." She stopped, unable to finish. Mercer looked away toward the distant hills. "I didn't come to your life by accident, Emily." The wind moved through the open field, carrying dust and memory together. "I knew your mother," he said. "And I made a promise I never kept." The truth buried for years. Inside the ranch house, Sheriff Caldwell waited with 2 deputies. Mercer was supposed to be arrested, taken in, charged for the violence, the intimidation, the years of control he had held over the valley. But nothing about that morning felt normal. Because justice, when it finally arrives, never feels like the stories people tell. It feels heavier, like grief, like truth. Emily followed Mercer inside, her heart racing as she unfolded the letter fully. It wasn't just a note. It was a confession, a hidden truth her mother had written before she died. "If anything happens to me, tell my daughter the truth. Mercer Blackwell is not just a man from our past, he is her protector. And her father is not who she thinks." Emily's breath caught. The room went silent. Even the sheriff stopped moving. "What does this mean?" Emily asked, voice breaking. Mercer's jaw tightened. "It means," he said slowly, "that everything you were told about your family was a lie meant to keep you alive." The moment everything shattered, Emily stepped back. "No," she whispered. "My father was, he was not the man you think," Mercer said. A long silence followed. Then he continued, voice heavy. "Years ago, your mother was caught between 2 worlds. One of power, one of violence. She tried to escape both." He looked directly at Emily now. "And when she gave birth to you, someone wanted you gone. Not because of who you were, but because of what you represented." The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. Mercer's voice dropped lower. "I was the only one who could get you out." Emily's hands shook violently now. "So you took me away from her." "I saved you," Mercer said sharply. Then softer, "but I couldn't save her." That last sentence hit harder than anything else. Emily's knees nearly gave out. Justice arrives, but not cleanly. Outside, horses neighed. The ranch hands gathered in silence, watching as the law finally caught up with Mercer Blackwell. Sheriff Caldwell stepped forward. "Daniel Mercer Blackwell," he said formally, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, unlawful control, and crimes committed across this valley." 2 deputies moved in. Mercer didn't resist. He simply nodded, like a man who had already accepted this moment long ago. But as they reached for his arms, Emily spoke. "Wait." Everyone froze. Her voice trembled, but it was stronger now. "I want the full truth," she said. "All of it, Before you take him, the sheriff hesitated. Mercer looked at her, not as a ruler, not as a prisoner, but something deeper. Like a father finally being seen after a lifetime of hiding. The secret that changes everything. Mercer exhaled slowly. There's something you don't know, he said. He reached into his coat. For a moment, everyone tensed, but he pulled out not a weapon. A small, weathered pendant. Inside it, faded but still visible, was a family crest. Emily stepped closer despite herself. That belonged to your mother, Mercer said. She gave it to me the night I promised to protect you. Emily's voice cracked. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because if I had, Mercer replied, you would have been in danger every day of your life. He paused, then dropped the final truth like a stone into still water. Your real father wasn't just dangerous, Emily. He was the one who ordered your mother's death. The world seemed to tilt. Emily staggered backward. That's impossible. But Mercer didn't flinch. And when I learned you were still alive, he continued, I made sure the world believed you didn't exist. The breaking point. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the wind seemed to stop. Emily looked at Mercer, really looked at him. All the anger, all the confusion, all the years of unanswered questions. It all collapsed into something else. Something quieter. Why protect me? She asked. Mercer's answer came without hesitation. Because I failed to protect your mother. That was it. No dramatic speech. No excuses. Just truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Heavy enough to carry a lifetime of guilt. The final decision. Sheriff Caldwell stepped forward again. It doesn't change the law, Mercer. I know, Mercer said calmly. But Emily raised her hand again. Stop. Everyone turned to her. Her voice was steadier now. If he really saved me, then I deserve to know everything before he goes anywhere. The sheriff studied her for a long moment. Then nodded once. 10 minutes, he said. And stepped back. A goodbye without words. Mercer turned, slightly toward Emily. For the first time, he looked tired. Not defeated, just done fighting. You'll be safe now, he said. That's not an answer, Emily replied. A faint, almost sad smile touched his face. It's the only one that matters. Emily stepped closer. You don't get to disappear after everything. I already did, he said quietly. A pause. Then, and you still found your way. To be continued. As the deputies moved closer again, Mercer didn't resist. But before they took him away, he leaned in just slightly and said something only Emily could hear. You were never alone, even when you thought you were. And then he was gone. Led out across the ranch yard. Past the barns, past the dust, past everything he had built, and everything he had destroyed to protect one life. Emily stood still, clutching the pendant, not realizing yet that the letter she found was only the beginning. Because inside it, hidden in the final folded corner, was a name. A name that would change everything again. And the truth about her family wasn't finished with her yet. The name in the folded corner. Some truths don't reveal themselves until everything else has already fallen apart. The ranch felt emptier after Mercer was taken away. Not because the land had changed, but because something inside Emily had. The pendant in her hand was heavier than it should have been. She stood alone in the main house, the letter still spread across the table, its edges trembling slightly in the draft coming through the open window. 10 minutes had ended, but she hadn't moved, because her eyes kept returning to the final folded corner of the paper Mercer had left behind. The one he didn't mention. The one he didn't want her to notice too quickly. Slowly, she lifted it. Her fingers hesitated for just a second. Then unfolded it. The hidden name. There was only one line inside. No explanation. No apology. Just a name written in sharp, deliberate ink. Governor Elias Varick. Emily stared at it. Nothing about it made sense at first. Then the memory hit her like a strike of lightning. She had heard that name before. Not in conversation. Not in passing. But in whispers. In fear. In silence that followed whenever powerful men were mentioned in the valley. Governor Elias Varick. A man who didn't just hold authority. He shaped it, controlled it, redefined it. Emily's throat tightened. No, she whispered. That's not possible. But the paper didn't change. The name didn't disappear. And somewhere deep inside her, Something began to click into place. The truth Mercer never said out loud. She grabbed her coat and stepped outside. The wind had picked up again. Like the land itself was uneasy. The deputies were gone. The sheriff's wagon had already disappeared down the road, taking Mercer with it. But Emily wasn't thinking about him anymore. She was thinking about the pattern. The lies. The warnings. The fear behind every decision made around her life. And now, a governor's name tied to it all. She walked toward the barn without thinking. Inside, everything was still as Mercer left it. But now she saw it differently. Every corner, every board, every place someone had tried to hide something. She dropped to her knees near the spot where she had found the letter. And started searching again. What was buried beneath truth? It didn't take long. The plank came loose easier this time. Below it was a small metal box. Locked, but old, almost like it had been waiting for her specifically. Her pulse quickened. She forced it open with a nearby tool. Inside were three things: a faded photograph, a stack of sealed documents, and a second pendant, matching the one Mercer gave her. Emily picked up the photograph first. Her breath stopped. It showed her mother, young, alive, standing beside Mercer, and another man, a man she didn't recognize. But his presence dominated the image, not because of his appearance, but because of how everyone stood around him, like he was the center of gravity. On the back of the photo, a single note was written. "If anything happens to me, protect her from Varric." Emily's hands went cold. The connection she didn't want to see. The documents were worse. Each page showed records, transfers, orders, names being moved like pieces on a board. And again, Governor Elias Varric's signature appeared at the bottom. But not as a governor making public decisions. As something else, something hidden, something operating behind every major event in the valley. Emily felt sick, because now she understood what Mercer meant. This wasn't just about her family. It was about control, about silence, about a system built to erase anyone who got too close to the truth. And her mother had known. The moment fear turns into clarity. Emily stood up slowly. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was no longer confused. It was sharp now, focused, angry. She looked toward the horizon where the road disappeared, where Mercer had been taken, and where everything else connected. If Mercer was protecting me from him, she whispered, then why arrest him now? The question didn't sit right. The timing, the speed, the silence from higher authorities. It all felt too clean, too controlled, like someone had been waiting for this exact moment. Emily turned back to the documents, and noticed something she missed before. A stamped seal, not the sheriff's office, not local law enforcement, something higher, state authority authorization. Her stomach dropped, the realization that changes everything. Mercer wasn't just arrested, he was removed. There was a difference, a dangerous one. And now Emily understood why he didn't fight it, why he accepted it so easily. Because this wasn't the end of his story. It was part of something much bigger. Something planned. Her mother's warning echoed in her mind. Protect her from Varric. Emily clenched her fists. "I am not staying in the dark anymore," she said aloud. Her voice didn't shake this time. It held something new. Resolve. A decision is made. She grabbed the photograph, the documents, both pendants, and placed them carefully into her bag. Then she looked once more at the empty barn, at the place where her life had changed direction without permission. "I don't know what you were trying to do, Mercer," she said quietly, "but I'm finishing it." Outside, the sky darkened slightly, not with storm clouds, but with the feeling that something far away had noticed her movement. Like the world above her had begun to shift. As Emily stepped onto the road, preparing to follow Mercer's trail to wherever he had been taken, a distant engine sound echoed through the valley. Slow, controlled, deliberate. She stopped, looked up. On the horizon, black vehicles were approaching. Not sheriff wagons, not ranch transport, something else, something official. And in the front of her mind, one thought formed clearly. They didn't just take Mercer away. They came back for her. The convoy on the horizon. When power moves in silence, it isn't coming to talk. Emily didn't move at first. The sound of engines grew louder across the valley, low and heavy, like thunder rolling over dry earth. Black vehicles emerged one by one over the ridge road. Not sheriff units, not local law enforcement. These were armored, official, controlled, and moving in formation like they already knew exactly where they were going. Emily slowly stepped backward toward the barn without breaking eye contact. Her fingers tightened around the bag strap. Inside it, the photographs, documents, and pendants suddenly felt like they weighed 10 times more. The arrival of controlled silence. The convoy stopped just outside the ranch boundary. Doors opened at the same time. Two synchronized to be casual. 3 men stepped out first, dressed in dark suits, not uniforms. Behind them, 2 more vehicles positioned themselves to block both ends of the road. Then a final car arrived. Longer, heavier, different. The door opened slowly, and a man stepped out who didn't need introduction. Emily felt it instantly. Authority doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it just bends the air around it. Governor Elias Varick. The name becomes a face. He looked nothing like fear. That was the dangerous part. No shouting, no urgency, no aggression, just calm precision, like a man arriving at a meeting he expected to win. His eyes scanned the ranch before landing on Emily. And stayed there. Emily Carter, he said calmly. Hearing her full name from his mouth felt wrong. Like something private had been pulled into public view. How do you know who I am? She asked. Varick didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a slow step forward. I know more about you than you realize, he said. Your mother made a mistake years ago. Emily's grip tightened. That wasn't a mistake, she said sharply. That was my life. A faint expression crossed his face, not anger. Amusement. Mercer's absence becomes a weapon. One of the men behind Varick spoke quietly. Mercer Blackwell is in custody. Transport confirmed. Emily's heart dropped slightly. Confirmed. Not arrested. Transported. Like inventory. Like something being moved from one controlled space to another. Varick nodded once. Good, he said. That single word changed everything. Emily felt it then. The truth she had been circling finally snapped into place. This wasn't justice. This was cleanup. The real reason they came. You didn't come for Mercer, Emily said slowly. Varick tilted his head slightly. No, he admitted. Mercer was already accounted for. He stepped closer now, just enough to make the distance uncomfortable. We came for what he protected. Emily took a step back. You mean me? Varick didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at the barn behind her. At the land. At the history. At everything Mercer had built around keeping her hidden. You were never supposed to grow up here, he said. That arrangement was temporary. Emily felt something inside her harden. Arrangement? Varick nodded. Your mother was relocated. You were protected under special directive conditions. Mercer violated that directive when he kept you off record. The words sounded technical, clean, but underneath them was something darker. Ownership disguised as law. The truth about protection. Emily shook her head. You call it protection, she said, but you're talking about control. Varick finally stopped smiling. For the first time, something colder appeared in his expression. Control is necessary when people don't understand what they're involved in. He stepped closer again. Your existence is tied to classified history. Mercer knew that. Your mother knew that. And now, so do you. Emily opened her bag slightly. Just enough for him to see the documents inside. That history, she said, or your version of it. A flicker of something passed through Varick's eyes. Recognition. Then calculation. The shift beneath the surface. One of his men leaned in. Governor, we should proceed with retrieval protocol. Emily caught that word immediately. Retrieval. Not arrest. Not protection. Retrieval. She stepped forward slightly. No, she said. You don't get to decide what happens to me. Varick studied her carefully now. Like someone reassessing a situation that wasn't behaving as expected. You think Mercer told you everything, he said. Emily didn't respond, because she wasn't sure anymore. And he saw that hesitation. That was enough. The buried truth begins to surface. Mercer Blackwell was not your savior, Varick said quietly. He was your containment breach. The words hit harder than she expected. Containment breach, not protector. not guardian, a violation of system boundaries. Emily's mind flashed back to everything Mercer had said. The warnings, the silence, the way he accepted arrest without resistance. Her voice lowered. What are you hiding? Varric stepped just close enough that his voice didn't need to carry. Something your mother died trying to stop becoming public. A pause. Then, and something Mercer has spent his entire life making sure you never fully understood. The breaking point. Emily's breathing slowed, not from fear now, from realization forming too quickly to fully process. You're not here to arrest me, she said. Varric's expression didn't change. No. A pause. You're here to rewrite what I know. That earned a quiet acknowledgement from him. A subtle nod. Knowledge is dangerous when incomplete, he said. Emily closed her bag, and for the first time, she didn't step back, she stepped forward. The decision that changes everything. If you wanted me hidden, she said, you should have done a better job. The convoy behind Varric shifted slightly, tension rising, but Varric raised one hand, and they stopped. He looked at her for a long moment, then said something unexpected. You're not afraid. It wasn't a question. Emily shook her head. No. A pause. Then, because I finally know I was never safe to begin with. That silence that followed was heavier than any threat. Varric studied her one last time, then spoke softly. Bring her in. The convoy moved, not rushing, not chaotic, controlled, but as the men stepped forward toward Emily, a distant sound echoed again. Another engine, faster this time, uncontrolled, approaching from the opposite direction, and for the first time, Varric looked away from Emily, toward the road, just slightly. Like something unexpected had entered a plan that was supposed to be perfect. Emily turned her head too, and whispered under her breath, Mercer, the man they thought was broken. Control only works, until something refuses to stay controlled. The second engine didn't sound like the convoy. It sounded older, rougher, like it had survived things it was never designed to survive. Emily's eyes stayed fixed on the road as dust rose in a thin line over the ridge. Governor Varric didn't move, but something in his posture changed. Not fear, recognition. That was worse, because recognition meant this wasn't unexpected, just delayed. The convoy men tightened formation automatically, training taking over instinct. And then, the vehicle appeared, a battered transport truck, half-armored, paint stripped by time and impact. It didn't belong to any official fleet Emily had ever seen, and it wasn't slowing down. The return of a contained man. The convoy stepped back slightly as the truck stopped in front of the ranch gate. Silence dropped instantly. The engine cut. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the rear door opened, and Mercer stepped out, but not the Mercer they took. This one looked different, not injured, not defeated, focused, like a man who had spent the ride deciding what the world was actually worth anymore. His hands were free. Which meant one thing, he was never fully in custody. Emily's breath caught. Mercer, she whispered. He didn't look at her first. His eyes went straight to Varric. That alone changed the atmosphere. The shift in power. Varric's voice stayed calm. This is unauthorized movement, he said. You should be in federal transport. Mercer took one step forward. Just one, and the convoy, instinctively adjusted again, not because he was armed. Because he wasn't behaving like someone who feared consequences anymore. I was, Mercer said quietly, until I realized who I was being delivered to. A pause. Then he finally looked at Emily, and something in his expression softened for a fraction of a second. Did you read it? He asked. She nodded once, holding the bag tighter. Mercer exhaled. Then you know why I couldn't stay in that vehicle. The truth Varric didn't want spoken. Varric stepped forward slightly now. This ends here, Mercer. Mercer finally turned toward him fully. No, he said. A beat of silence. It starts here. The words landed heavier than any threat. Emily felt it immediately. This wasn't about escape anymore. It was about exposure. Varric's eyes narrowed slightly. You're making a mistake. Mercer nodded once. I made those for years. This isn't one of them. He reached into his jacket slowly. The convoy tensed instantly, but Mercer didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a small recording device. Old, damaged, but active. Emily's stomach tightened. What is that? she asked. Mercer looked at her. Everything they tried to erase before they erased you. The breaking of control. Varroc's composure cracked, just slightly. Shut it down, he ordered sharply. But Mercer pressed a button and spoke one sentence into it. If you're hearing this, then Governor Elias Varroc has already decided I cannot be allowed to leave alive. The convoy froze. Even Varroc didn't move immediately. Because now it wasn't just a confrontation. It was documentation. Mercer continued, and if you're hearing this, then Emily Carter was never supposed to survive her childhood. Emily stepped forward instinctively. What are you doing? She whispered. Mercer didn't look away from Varroc. Ending the version of this story they built. The moment everything tips. Varroc's voice dropped. You don't understand what you're triggering. Mercer finally smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was tired. I understand perfectly, he said. Then he looked at Emily again. And his voice softened. I kept you hidden so long you forgot the world would come looking eventually. Emily shook her head slightly. Then why come back now? That question hung in the air. Mercer's answer was simple. Because they stopped looking for you. He glanced at Varroc and started preparing for you. The convoy moved again, this time faster. Varroc raised his hand, but Mercer stepped forward, just enough to force a pause, and said the words that changed everything. If I go back in that truck, this recording gets released automatically. A beat, then another. Even Varroc stopped, because now the situation wasn't about control anymore. It was about exposure. Silence stretched across the ranch. Emily stood between two forces she finally understood were never separate. Control and resistance. Mercer turned slightly toward her. This is your choice now, he said quietly. Varroc spoke at the same time. Emily, step away from him. Two paths. One moment, and the wind moved across the valley like it was waiting for her answer. Emily looked at Mercer, then at Varroc, then at the convoy, and finally, she stepped forward, not back, not aside, forward, toward Mercer, and said quietly, I'm done being moved. The convoy shifted instantly. Varroc's eyes darkened, and for the first time, the system didn't know what she was going to do next. The truth they couldn't contain. The moment you stop running from the truth, is the moment it stops belonging to them. The valley felt different now. Not because it had changed, but because Emily had. She stood beside Mercer, no longer behind him, no longer protected by silence, no longer moved by anyone else's decisions. Just there, present, unshaken. Governor Varroc watched her carefully, like a man recalculating a plan that no longer followed its original rules. The convoy stayed in position, but the hesitation was visible now. Not fear, uncertainty. And uncertainty was something systems like his didn't tolerate well. The breaking point of control. Mercer held the recording device in his hand. Still active, still counting down whatever invisible chain of release it had been designed to trigger. Varroc's voice cut through the air. This is your final warning. Mercer didn't respond. He looked at Emily instead. This is where it ends, he said quietly. Emily frowned slightly. For who? Mercer's answer came after a pause. For all of them. That wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight that made even the convoy men shift uncomfortably. The decision no one expected. Emily stepped forward again. One step, then another, until she was slightly ahead of Mercer. Facing Varroc directly. I want the truth, she said. Varroc's expression tightened. You already have fragments, he replied. Fragments are dangerous in inexperienced hands. Emily didn't blink. Then explain it properly. A long silence followed. Even Mercer stayed quiet now. Because this was no longer his decision either. The truth finally exposed. Varroc exhaled slowly, and for the first time, he dropped the controlled tone. Your mother wasn't just a witness to corruption, he said. She was part of the system that built it. Emily's face didn't change immediately. But something inside her did. Varroc continued. She discovered what came after that system was implemented. A structure of influence that didn't belong to any government branch. Something deeper, older. He paused. Mercer wasn't your protector by assignment. A beat. He was your mother's last attempt to break free of it. Emily's voice came out quieter than she intended. In me. Varroc looked at her directly. You were never meant to exist outside of observation. That sentence hit differently, not like an insult, like a classification. Mercer's final piece. Mercer finally spoke again. That's not the full truth. All eyes turned to him. Even Varick's. Mercer stepped forward slightly. You're leaving out what she found inside the system, he said. Varick didn't respond immediately. That silence was enough confirmation. Emily's attention locked onto Mercer. What did she find? Mercer looked at her for a long moment. Then said, a list of names. A pause. And yours was already on it before you were born. The air changed instantly. The realization. Emily took a slow step back. No, she whispered. Mercer nodded once. That's why everything happened the way it did. Varick's voice sharpened again. Enough. But Mercer wasn't finished. Your mother stole you out of a system that had already marked you for controlled development. Emily shook her head. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to, Mercer said softly. It only has to be true. The final collapse of authority. The convoy moved again, this time faster, but Mercer raised the recording device slightly and spoke one final line into it. If this triggers, everything attached to Project Carter goes public. Varick froze completely this time. Not because of threat, because of consequence. Emily turned to Mercer. What happens if you release it? Mercer didn't hesitate. Everything ends. A pause. Then softer. But so does the lie. The choice that defines everything. Varick stepped forward one last time. You think exposure is freedom? He said. It's collapse. Chaos. Loss of everything built to keep order. Emily looked at him directly. And what you call order, she said, is just control you're afraid to lose. Silence again. Heavy. Final. Then, Emily turned slightly toward Mercer. What do I do? For the first time in all 10 parts. Mercer didn't answer immediately, because this wasn't his decision anymore. It belonged to her. He finally said, decide whether the truth lives in silence, or in daylight. The final moment. Emily closed her eyes for just a second. The convoy waited. Varick waited. Mercer waited. Then she opened them, and nodded once. Mercer pressed the button. Aftermath. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the device blinked, and somewhere far beyond the valley, a system that had existed quietly for years began to register an irreversible breach. Varick closed his eyes, not in defeat, in calculation, because even he understood now. This wasn't the end of control. It was the beginning of exposure. And as the convoy began to withdraw under silent orders, Mercer looked at Emily and said quietly, it's not over. Emily nodded. I know. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what came next. Please friends spot my channel. Like, share, comment, subscribe for more stories. Thanks for watching.